Okay, so it's 3 a.m. and you can't sleep. You're flipping through channels on the television, and then you hear this.
Do you need a miracle? Real people with real needs are receiving real life-changing miracles when they use the miracle spring water.
My husband brought the spring water up and I drank it, and I'm speaking today. I had no speech, totally paralyzed, and now I'm testifying.
You had sent me the water and I used it. You told me I was going to get a check for $7,000. Sure enough, I got a check in the mail. It was exactly $7,000.
That's Peter Popoff in his late night infomercial, which aired in 2018. He's selling miracle spring water. It's blessed, a divine point of contact for healing, financial breakthrough, and, of course, debt relief.
This faith tool will help you to see liberation from the bondage of debt. It's free. I want to send it to you. No obligation. Call me now.
It's free, no obligation. And so you call. And when the bottle arrives, you're supposed to sleep with it, supposedly, pray over it, pour it in your hands, and then send the empty bottle back with a donation.
And when you told me to anoint my checkbook yesterday, I received a letter for over $45,000 that my second mortgage was paid off.
Get the spring water, drink the spring water, or whatever you need to do with it. It really works.
Release your faith now by calling for your free packet of miracle spring water.
Anoint your checkbook with holy water. Then send money. And then the envelopes, they just keep coming asking for you to give more money with more prayers, more seeds to sow. Always another reason why this time will be different. Because Popoff isn't selling holy water. He's selling relief, salvation that you can buy. So back in February of 1986, there's a magician and investigator, James Randi, and he exposed him on the Johnny Carson show. Popoff claimed that God spoke directly to him, revealing people's names and ailments during these healing crusades. Turns out the voice wasn't in fact God's, surprisingly. It was his wife, feeding him information through a hidden earpiece, details people had written on prayer cards.
I'm talking to you. Can you hear me? If you can't, you're in trouble. Jody.
Jody Dean?
No, she should be right there on your right side. Okay, she lives at 4267 Masterson.
4267 Masterson. I can see the angels of God all around your house.
That's disturbing when you see it.
When the show aired, the ministry, of course, collapsed. Popoff declared bankruptcy in 1987. But then he came back. No more public crusades, though. Just the late night infomercials. Less risky, obviously. Mailing lists, private transactions. And by 2015, his ministry was pulling in $23 million a year. He was paying himself well over $600,000 a year, owned a $2.1 million home, and drove a $100,000 Porsche. Sometimes the grift pays well.
You see, it's not the water that releases the power. It's your obedience to the instructions of the prophet of God.
Kathy Rowe and her disabled husband, Donald, fell for Popoff's pitch.
Surely God would see our pain and bless us.
They borrowed thousands of dollars from relatives, saying they were going to pay their bills. But instead, they sent it to Popoff, $4,500 in all.
I just look back on it and think, I'm a pretty stupid person.
We wanted to ask Popoff a few questions. Reverend Popoff?
Yes.
Matt Mahar with Inside Edition. Could I ask you a few questions about your ministry? Hey, you're squeezing me.
Sorry.
How can you justify taking all of this money from people that are desperate? Can you just answer us one question?
Can you just move away, please?
Would you talk to us later, please?
No.
That's the guy. Exposed as a fraud, came back stronger, made millions of dollars off of desperate people, and when asked to justify it, can you just move away, please? In 2018, UK regulators fined broadcasters for airing his infomercials, claims that crossed from faith well into fraud. But in the US, they just kept running, still selling, still asking for donations. So fast forward to 2026. YouTube thumbnail, this camera changed everything. Camera emoji, fire emoji, faces shocked, arrows pointed, 10:03 runtime. Description, affiliate links in the bio. It's the same hustle, different spring water, way better production value. Well, my name is Patrick Fuller, and this is the Terrible Photographer podcast, where we have honest conversations about creativity, identity, and discovering your voice. Today, my friends, is episode 50. Guys, we made it to episode 50. I cannot believe it. This is part 3 of a series of episodes I'm calling Heresies, where we say the things that the photography industry would prefer you not think about too hard, much less talk about. It's a series that might get me into some hot water, might get me into some trouble, but as always, I'm here for it. And I'm thrilled that this particular episode, which has been cooking low and slow for a long time, is finally here, finally ready. I can't imagine a more fitting 50th episode than this one, which I've titled The Oracle. And you know, when I first mapped out this series, this particular episode wasn't included, but the idea had been brewing, haunting me. And I feel like the universe had been throwing me signals that I should just go with it and do it. But I have to warn you, if you haven't already noticed, this is a little bit longer of an episode, by far, probably one of my longest. So this is more of a marathon and not a sprint. I have a lot to say about this. So here it is. Today we're talking about why photography influencers are in fact the modern day televangelists, how they're making you feel inadequate, why they have a vested interest in keeping you feel inadequate, and how they're changing not just what you think is good, but what you literally see when you look at work, your work. And my hot take, why most of them can't actually shoot. If this is your first episode, welcome. I'm glad you're here. This podcast really is the podcast that I wanted for a long time, where someone would talk about the things that I was thinking about. So out of my own selfishness, I actually made it. I hope you are doing well, and wherever you are on the spinning rock floating in the vast cosmos, I hope you are staying warm. And as always, you can email me anytime. Questions, thoughts, deep confessions. And if you're out there and you are a photography influencer, feel free to direct hate mail my way. I read everything. My email address is in the show notes. So, with that said, let's get into it. Okay, so before we go any farther, let me be clear. I'm not saying gear influencers are Peter Popoff. Popoff is a documented fraud, caught on tape, exposed, came back and made millions selling false hope to desperate and sick people. That's not YouTube. That's not camera influencers, where the reviews are real, the products exist, and the affiliate links work as advertised. No one's lying about autofocus or dynamic range. This isn't fraud, but it's the same theology. Popoff deals in the prosperity gospel, the idea that God wants you rich and send a $50 seed, quote unquote, the key to the vault. But gear influencers preach another gospel. They don't want your soul, they want your attention, which they tithe to Amazon and B&H via affiliate links. It's the same psychological architecture, same business model, just a sanitized version for the creative class. Popoff sells, quote unquote, financial breakthroughs. And the influencer sells a creative breakthrough. Popoff promises transformation through scripture. The influencer promises transformation through censors. They both profit from the same thing, the persistent, gnawing feeling that you're not yet enough. The difference is severity and intent. Popoff preys on the sick and the broke. But gear influencers operate in a system that rewards inadequacy. And most probably don't even realize it. They genuinely believe that the new camera is better. They think they are helping, maybe. But the system requires you to keep shopping. They're tapping into the part of us that believes things we can purchase are in fact shortcuts. That they have the key, you know? And if you just enter your credit card information, you can be great too. Because if you ever feel like you have enough or you are enough, the revenue stops. So, no. Gear influencers aren't televangelists, but they are selling the same problem. If you just buy the right thing, you'll be transformed. And that promise, whether wrapped in scripture or specs, is always a lie. Because transformation isn't a transaction. It's something you build. Okay, so let me show you the ritual. We'll call it the inadequacy spiral. So let's say you buy the new Canon R6 Mark II. You can buy it new on sale right now on B&H for $2,000. And the moment that you unbox it, it's perfect. You know, it's an idol. For 2 weeks, you're saved. Your photography feels validated by the money that you sacrificed at the altar of B&H. Then the high priest uploads a new video. The thumbnail is a revelation. The R6 is dead. The Mark III is here. And suddenly your camera, your holy camera, is desecrated. The influencer tells you that the new model fixes flaws that you didn't even know were sins. Better tracking, more megapixels, a pure sensor. And something shifts. The camera that you loved just 2 weeks ago, now it's a burden. And you started noticing its limitations. The autofocus isn't quite as fast. The files aren't quite as detailed. And so you watch the comparison videos. You read the comments, the sacred texts of the dissatisfied. Is the R6 Mark II still pro in 2026? Why I'm leaving the Church of Canon for the Sony Temple. The one lens that you need to be legitimate. And 6 months later, you're not a photographer. You're a supplicant. You're apologizing for your gear on Facebook groups, to your photographer friends, to your clients. You're watching reviews of cameras that you can't afford, believing that you need that f1.2 85 millimeter to finally feel legitimate. And look, the camera didn't change. Still the same camera. The camera didn't change. Your faith did. And you were taught to worship what you lack instead of what you hold. And here's the heresy. Your satisfaction is their bankruptcy. If you're content with your gear, the church collapses. If you stop watching, they lose their ties, their ad revenue, their sponsorships, their commissions. They can't let you be at peace. They need you in a state of perpetual almost. Almost is the most profitable emotion in the world, but it's also the most seductive because almost feels productive, like you're working on it, you know? You're taking it seriously, investing in your craft. Almost feels responsible. A serious photographer would have that lens. And almost feels safer than finishing, because if you say, quote unquote, this gear is enough, now I just need to make better work, then the only variable left is you, your vision, your taste, your ability. And that's terrifying, because you can't buy your way out of that problem. And so we stay in almost ready, almost equipped, almost prepared to do the real work, but almost lets us feel like photographers without the risk of making photography. Peter Popoff ran the same play, ran the same game. It was never just the miracle water. That was just the entrance fee. It was a sacred Dead Sea salt, the seeds of faith, always another letter, another miracle, another grift, another reason why this time would change your life. And look, most influencers, I would think, don't see themselves as Popoff. They genuinely believe that the new Fuji sensor is better. But they're operating in a machine that views your confidence and your gear as a leak in their sales funnel. And they sell the promise that transformation is a transaction. But whether that promise is wrapped in a prayer or wrapped in a 4K review, it's still a lie. It's all a lie. Transformation is not something you purchase. It's something you build. And here's the part that I need to say extremely clearly, because it's easy to point at influencers and say, they're doing this to us. But that's not the whole truth. We helped. We are the ones who clicked the link, who watched the review, who bought the course just in case. We are the ones who upgraded when we didn't need to, not because we were tricked, because it felt like progress. Peter Popoff's followers didn't feel stupid when they sent money. They actually felt relief. They felt like they were finally doing something, taking action. The inadequacy wasn't imposed on me. There have been times when I've bought gear that I didn't need. And at the time of purchase, I didn't feel frivolous. I felt responsible. Like, this is what serious photographers do. The inadequacy wasn't imposed upon me at the time of purchase. I was an active participant in it. I believed it. I wanted to believe it, because believing it meant the solution was simple. Just buy the right thing. And that's why the system works, you know? Not because influencers are evil, I don't think they are, but because we're all looking for some relief. Relief from uncertainty, relief from the slow work of developing taste, relief from not knowing if we're good enough yet. And buying something, spending money, anything, feels like progress, even when it's not. And Peter Popoff did the same thing. He sent the money for some water, nothing changed. Then you got another letter. You sent the sacred salt. You anointed your checkbook and you sent another $30 and nothing changed. And you got another letter. You sowed a bigger seed, $50, $100. God is testing your faith, right? And then nothing changed. Meanwhile, the $100,000 Porsche, the $2.1 million home, the $600,000 salary, all funded by you. And when confronted, can you just move away, please? So there's something else, though. Something that pisses me off more than camera inadequacy or perpetuating a cycle of dissatisfaction. Something I see especially with younger photographers. They're being taught, conditioned, actually, that being an influencer or micro-celebrity with a camera is better than being a photographer. But having a YouTube channel where you talk about photography, have a bunch of followers, and being monetized is more valuable than actually doing the work and making great work. And I see it constantly. Photographers 2-3 years into their career, already planning their content strategy, talking about building their personal brand, thinking about what gear reviews they will make, what tutorials they will sell, what workshops they will put on. They're looking at influencers like Peter McKinnon or Tony Northrup or whoever the name of the week is, and they're thinking that's the goal. That's success. Not being published by Vogue, not building a client roster, not developing a body of really great work that you're proud of, but building a following. And here's the key, of other photographers. And by the way, I get it. I intellectually understand why. Because the math is really seductive here. The idea is sexy. If you're a working commercial photographer, you might make $100,000 a year, $150K if you're really good and you hustle hard. But if you're a gear influencer with 500,000 subscribers, you have affiliate commissions, you have sponsorships, you have ad revenue, you have course sales. You could make $300K, $500K, more. And then you don't have to deal with clients. You don't have tight deadlines, or you don't have to compromise creatively. And on top of that, you're looked up to, right? Photographers know your name. You walk through conferences like WPPI in Las Vegas. And people know who you are. And all you have to do, friends, is post consistently. Use the right hooks and keep the algorithm happy. So younger photographers look at that and they think, why would I spend 10 years working hard, mastering the craft, when I could spend 2 years building a successful YouTube channel? And I don't think they're wrong about the economics here, but I think they're wrong about what they're becoming. Because for being really honest, you're not a photographer at that point. People think you're a photographer, but it's just a costume. It's just a means to an end. What you really are is a content creator who happens to own a camera or talk about photography. And I guess there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to be, but let's not confuse the two. Let's not pretend that talking about photography on the internet is the same thing as doing photography professionally. Peter McKinnon is not a professional photographer. And even if you were to ask him, I don't think he would call himself that. Peter McKinnon, at his core, is a YouTuber. He's a content creator. He's a marketing member of Canon. And this is not a dig at Peter. I don't want to throw shade here. And Peter is talented. He's incredibly talented. He very much has the skills, the photography chops, to be a professional photographer. But he has made a choice to make content, to talk about cameras and gimbals and drones. And he's really, really good at that. But Peter McKinnon isn't pitching to clients. He's not creating lighting treatments. He's not developing shot lists and being paid creative fees and image licensing. He's not shooting weddings or hiring second shooters. He's not selling landscape prints on gallery walls. He's not shooting headshots at tech companies. He's not advertising for Christmas minis or family sessions or whatever local photographers actually do. He's creating content that generates revenue. And on top of that, he has his own line of camera backpacks and filters. He partners with companies like Peak Design. He does a lot of stuff. He has his hands in a lot of pots. But none of it, I'm afraid, is actually professional photography. Do you see the difference? And the result is this. The result is that you have a generation of photographers who are really good at making content about photography, but not very good at making photography, or at least creating images that are their own. Images that they make just because they think that they should exist, or images for a client to be published only, or images to start a conversation, or as a way to express how they feel about a particular subject. They are far more interested in reviewing a lens than actually using it. They can explain lighting theory better than they can actually light a subject. They want to be in front of the camera more than behind it. They can create only out of a desire to get views, expand their reach, and hope that it will get them noticed by their peers and grow their follower count so that they can work with a brand or maybe get monetized by their content. Again, I'm not saying this is evil or necessarily wrong. I'm just saying the incentive structure is broken, because the fastest path to income, to photography income sometimes, isn't mastering the craft. It's building an audience and monetizing their attention. And once you realize that, it's hard to stay focused on the actual work. And look, I need to be really honest about something here, because I know what some of you are thinking. As a skeptic myself, I would be thinking it too. Patrick, aren't you doing the same thing? You have a podcast. You wrote a book. You have a newsletter. You talk about photography on the internet instead of just shooting. So what makes you different? This is absolutely a fair question. And here's my answer. I'm not sure I am that different in some ways. Here's what I would say though. I'm a working commercial photographer. That's my primary income. I pitch clients. I create lighting treatments. I negotiate creative fees and image licensing. I shoot campaigns for brands and products and people. And I've done that for years before I even started the podcast. This podcast came after I had already built a career, after I'd already figured out how to make a living doing this, after I'd already failed enough times to have something worth talking about. And look, I don't make money from this podcast. There's no affiliate links. There's no gear sponsorships. I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. Some of you use it, 90% don't, and that's fine. I wrote a book. You can buy it if you want or don't. I'm not gonna pressure you. And I need to say this clearly and upfront. I haven't talked about this on the podcast, but now is a good time. I will never take corporate sponsorships for this podcast. People have asked me about it though, grilled me about it actually. If Avoto wanted to sponsor an episode, would you do it? What if Canon offered you free gear to review? Would you consider a sponsorship, a partnership with ProPhoto? And please hear me. Absolutely not. And before you think I'm being self-righteous or whatever, let me be clear why. It's not because I think those companies are evil. Listen, I shoot Canon. I use Canon. I like their cameras. But the second I take money from them or gear from them, I can't really talk freely about them. Because if Canon is paying me, if they're sending me free gear, if they suddenly made me a Canon ambassador of light, does that mean I can still make an episode criticizing their ambassador program? Can I point out that their color science debates are mostly just bullshit marketing? Can I say their new R5 Mark II release is overpriced and probably unnecessary? Maybe. In theory, I guess. But the incentive changes. Because now there's a check on the table, or a title, or a $4,000 camera body that I didn't pay for. And I know, whether consciously or unconsciously, that if I'm too critical, that money stops. So it influences what I say. So I made a rule. No corporate sponsorships ever. Not from camera companies, not from software companies, not from anyone who makes products photographers buy. My only exception here, please hear me, is Guinness. If Guinness wants to make me some ambassador, if Guinness wants to send me a check or free beer, I will absolutely become a corporate shill for Guinness. But I digress. Because, truthfully, friends, I want to be free to say what I actually think about these companies without wondering if I'm pulling punches, without second guessing if I'm being too harsh, without worrying about the next check. And maybe this is being a little arrogant, I have to warn you. I feel like if I wanted to, I could probably make real money from this podcast if I did open it up to sponsorships, if I started to review gear, or, let's be honest, nicer to camera companies. If I had affiliate links, I would maybe get products sent to me, free cameras, free lenses, free lights. I'd get paid to mention brands, $500 here, $1,000 there per episode, depending upon the reach. But the second I do that, my incentives change. The second my income depends on you feeling like you need something, I can't be honest with you anymore. I can't tell you that the camera you have is good enough. So stop shopping and start shooting. Because that kind of thing kills the affiliate revenue. I can't tell you, look, man, you don't need the course. You just need to fail a little bit more and figure it out. Because that kills the funnel. I can't criticize Canon's marketing tactics if Canon is cutting me a check. So I made a choice. Keep the photography business separate. Keep the podcast honest. Make the money from clients who hire me to solve their problems, not from companies who want access to your attention. Does this make me better than Peter McKinnon or anyone else that monetizes their content? No, absolutely not. They just made a different choice, a more profitable choice, honestly. But it does mean my incentives are more aligned with telling you the truth, not selling you something, not with keeping my sponsors happy. And that's the distinction that I'm trying to make here. Not content creators are bad, working photographers are good. But when your income depends on people staying dissatisfied, or when your income depends on keeping brands happy, you can't help people see clearly. But yeah, I am holding up a mirror here And I'm in that reflection too. But I just want to be honest with you about what I see. I'm trying to structure things so I can keep being honest, even when it's not the most profitable choice, you know? Okay, so now I actually want to talk about how influencers, I think, are redefining what is good and acceptable. Because you have the economic part, which you've talked about at length, right? The consumerism, the inadequacy spiral. That's just the surface. I think the deeper problem is what they're doing to the craft. Because gear influencers aren't just selling cameras, let's be honest. I think they're teaching you what good actually means. And they're wrong. So I was on TikTok last night, a live stream. I'm not proud of it, you know? And they were doing this thing where the photographers, a couple people that I follow, were doing Instagram feed critiques. They were critiquing images on people's Instagram feeds, and people were dropping their handles. And these photographers would pull up the profiles and critique their work live in front of a bunch of people. And most of the advice was fine. It was pretty benign, right? It was things like your composition could be stronger, the lighting is inconsistent, but it was all technical. This work is soft. What lens were you using? Your colors are all over the place. Are you shooting raw? You need more dynamic range in your shadows. It was technical, measurable, but fixable. And to me, no one was asking the interesting questions. Questions like, I don't know, what kind of photographer do you want to be? What story are you trying to tell? How do you feel about these images? Nobody was asking about vision or intent, whether the work was saying what the photographer wanted to say or if they even thought about it. Because I think those questions don't really have clear answers, you know? They require more conversational nuance, some vulnerability, some introspection. And you can't answer that in 30 seconds on TikTok. But you can say your images are soft. You should upgrade your lens. It's easy, it's actionable, it's measurable. And it keeps people watching. Because now they're thinking, maybe I do need a sharper lens. And the algorithm just keeps spinning. Now, I need to be really honest about something here because I'm about to make an argument about how gear culture changed the photography conversations. I don't want to romanticize the past here. Photographers have always been technical nerds. I think a good example is my dad. My dad was into photography for a long time. I would consider him a more professional amateur. He did the occasional gigs. I remember him spending time with the owner of the film lab, a friend of his. His name was Clyde. He would spend hours talking about push processing, grain structure, whether Tri-X or HP5 was better, which developer gave the best shadow detail. It was nerdy as hell, you know? And I respect it because technical conversations have always been a part of photography. I enjoy them too. But here's what I think is different now, though. The technical conversation has become the conversation. It hasn't replaced the aesthetic conversation. It just sort of pushed it out. Before, I think you would have both. You would talk about light and composition in the moment, and you would geek out about film stocks and lenses. The technical stuff was the foundation, the craft, the means to an end. But the end was still the image. And now I think the technical conversation, I'm afraid, is the end. It's not, how do I use these tools to make better images, but which tools are objectively superior based upon measurable performance. The gear became the subject, not the work. And I think the reason is accessibility. It's easier to learn about gear than it is to actually learn how to see. Because you can watch a 10-minute video and understand what dynamic range is. But you can't watch a 10-minute video and develop taste. So gear content proliferates. It becomes teachable, quantifiable, comparable. And vision content really doesn't, because it's subjective, it's slow, it's uncomfortable. And the result is a generation of photographers who know everything about sensor performance and nothing about why the image works, who can tell you about corner sharpness of every Nikon lens, but can't tell you what makes a portrait compelling, who optimize for technical perfection, but have absolutely no point of view. It's not that the technical conversation is bad. It's that it's become a substitute for the aesthetic conversation, not the foundation for it. I often say that gear now drives the bus. And again, my dad talked about push processing because he was, I hope, trying to get a specific look. The technical choice served the vision. Now people, I've heard these conversations, talk about dynamic range without asking, dynamic range for what? What am I trying to say? That requires 15 stops. The technical choice is the vision. And I think that's the problem. So writing this script, it made me think of a video that I watched years ago. Scott Kelby, if you don't know who Scott Kelby is, he has Kelby One Training. It's kind of a photography education company. They're based out of Florida. Scott Kelby was doing this photo walk with photographer Jeremy Cowart. And I'm a big fan of Jeremy, so I was really interested in this conversation between Scott and Jeremy. Jeremy, if you don't know him, he's a legitimate working photographer. He's now an artist. He's kind of shifted into the more artist space. He's an activist. Just a good guy. I really look up to him. He's shot celebrity portraits and album covers and commercial campaigns. A bunch of people. And they're walking in Venice Beach, California, and they're with a model. And Jeremy's talking about his process and everything. And they're walking around the city and they're shooting and talking. And at one point, Jeremy has a model in this like garage doorway thing. And he's shooting. It's beautiful light. It's an interesting background. And he's directing the model. He makes subtle adjustments, hand positions, where she's looking, getting the moment, really making something cool, And then Scott Kelby interrupts him out of nowhere, mid-direction. Hey, Jeremy, what are your settings? Jeremy pauses. There's this moment you can see on his face where He's just confused. Like, why are you asking me this right now? But then he remembers that he's on camera and he's professional and kind. And he goes, oh, I think I'm at f4, 1/200th of a second, ISO 400 or something like that. It's kind of awkward. It comes across awkward on camera. Then he just goes back to directing and shooting. But that moment stuck with me all these years because you can tell what Jeremy's thinking. Like, why the fuck does this matter? He's capturing a moment, directing a subject, seeing the light, and making an image. And Scott Kelby, well-meaning, I assume trying to educate his audience, interrupts and asks about settings. As if the settings were the thing. As if knowing that f4 at 1/200th of a second at IS 200 would help anyone make a better image. But you can't. Because the settings aren't the image. We all know this. The seeing is the image. You can't reverse engineer that from camera data. But here's what I really think gets lost. Not just taste, not just vision, but the willingness to sit with the uncertainty. I see it constantly. Photographers second guessing their own instincts and every decision. Before every shoot, they're searching things like best compositions for portraits or watching YouTube tutorials on 3-point lighting. And when it's time to edit the image, nowadays, they upload it to Google or ChatGPT. Is this colored on trend? When did we stop trusting our eyes? Our own instincts. When did we stop believing confusion is just part of the job? Because gear culture teaches you that there's always a right answer, a correct setting, a proper technique, a proven system. And if you don't know it, you just haven't watched the right videos yet, the right content. But photography isn't like that. Photography is you make a choice. And sometimes you don't know if it's right or not. You find out later. You make the ugly frames first. You fail. You adjust. You try again. And you sit with the discomfort of not knowing. And slowly, painfully slowly sometimes, you develop the ability to see. But gear culture has conditioned a whole generation to believe discomfort means you're doing it wrong. That uncertainty means you need more information. That confusion means you haven't bought the right course yet. So they stop making ugly first frames. They stop experimenting. They stop trusting that slow, uncomfortable process of figuring it out. They start optimizing for sharpness, for specs, for technique, for anything measurable, because measurable feels certain, and certainty always feels safe. But certainty is the enemy of vision, because vision lives in the land of uncertainty, in the not knowing, in the willingness to make a choice without knowing if it's right. And we've traded that for the comfort of being told what to do. So let me say something that is going to piss people off, but it needs to be said. Most camera influencers aren't photographers. They dabble. They own cameras. They know how to use them. They're not working photographers. They're not shooting client work regularly. They're not building portfolios. They're not getting hired to solve problems. We talked about this with Peter McKinnon. They're just making content about cameras. And again, that's a different job. But here's the really sort of touchy part, the part that might not make me friends. I don't think most of them are even good. Yeah, I said it. And I'm not talking about taste or style. I'm talking about basic photography competence. The ability to see light, to compose a frame, to capture a moment, to make an image that communicates something. Because when you actually look at their work, not the gear review B-roll, but the actual portfolio work, if you can find it, if they even have it, it's not really good. Sometimes it's snapshots with a $7,000 Fuji medium format camera, you know? It's technically proficient, right? It's properly exposed. It's in focus. But the image is creatively dead. There's no vision. There's no intent. There's no point of view. Just, I pointed a really expensive camera at a thing and I pressed a button. There's a gear influencer with 800,000 subscribers, posts weekly, camera reviews, lens comparisons, autofocus tests, and occasionally, quote unquote, sample images from whatever gear he's testing. Always the same. His girlfriend in a park, shallow depth of field, balls, looking off camera, wind and hair, or coffee cup on a table, shallow depth field, steam rising, or his dog running towards the camera, testing continuous autofocus. These aren't photographs, or they're not even really test shoots. They just exist to demonstrate camera performance. Nothing to do with photographic vision. And when you look at them as images divorced from, look how sharp this lens is, they're nothing. Generic, forgettable snapshots. The kind that you would scroll past without even giving it a second thought. But he's got 800,000 people watching him explain why this lens is better than that lens. And no one's asking, can this dude actually shoot? How do you spot this? Well, just go to their website, find their portfolio. Again, if they have one, don't go to their YouTube, don't go to their Instagram, look at their actual portfolio. The work that they're proud enough to put on their homepage. And ask the question, would I hire this person? Not do they know a lot about cameras, not do they make good YouTube videos, but is their work good enough that I would pay them real money to create images for me? And most of the time, friends, the answer is no. Not because they're bad people, but because they're not professional photographers. They're just gear experts. And those are two different skills. It's like taking cooking advice from someone who's never worked in a restaurant. Sure, they can tell you what knives are sharp. They can compare heat distribution on stovetops. They can test how non-stick various pans are. But can they cook? Would you trust them to cook you a beef Wellington? Right? Can they create a dish that makes you stop and say, damn, that's good. That makes me want to slap my mama. So good. That's a different question. And we've stopped asking those questions. Most of us don't even care. We just consume their content because we've given authority to people who know how to measure corner sharpness but can't make an interesting photograph, who can test autofocusing tracking but can't capture a meaningful moment, who can compare dynamic range across sensor size but don't have an actual point of view. And as a result, You have a generation of photographers who know everything about gear and nothing about vision, who can tell you which lens is the sharpest but can't tell you what makes an image powerful, who can measure performance but can't create art. Because we learn from the wrong people. We took advice from the gear experts instead of the photographers, and we didn't notice a difference until it was too late. You know, I used to think this was about gear influencers being shallow, that they didn't care about the craft, that they were just chasing views and the revenue. But I don't really think that's it anymore. The more I think about it, I think most of them actually genuinely love photography. At least I think most of them genuinely love part of photography. I think they're really excited about new cameras and gear. They enjoy testing gear. And some of them are actually helping people make informed consumer decisions. I'm going to be honest here. The problem isn't their intent. The problem, though, I think, is the language that they've created and the vision that they've corrupted. Because here's what's happened. We wanted shortcuts. We wanted someone to tell us what to buy, what would make us better, what would close the gap between where we are and where we want to be. And gear influencers showed up and said, look, the answer is external. It's something that you can measure. It's something that you can buy. And we believed them because that's easier than the truth. But the truth is this. The war is internal. It's not technical. It's vision. It's taste. It's the ability to see something and know it matters. And you don't develop that by watching reviews. You develop it by looking, by shooting, by failing, by trying again, by asking, what makes this image work? Not what camera made this image. But you can't make a YouTube video about that, you know? You can't monetize, just keep shooting. You can't put a developed taste in an Amazon affiliate link. So they just sell you specs and dynamic range and color science and the promise that if you just upgrade one more time, friends, you will finally be legitimate. And Peter Popoff did the same thing. He sold you the spring water, and when that didn't work, he sold you the prayer cloth, and when that didn't work, he sold you another seed to sow. There's always another product, always another promise, always another reason this time would be different. And the problem, my friends, wasn't the water. The problem was believing transformation could be purchased. Let me tell you what doesn't matter. Whether your lens is sharp at 1.2 or 1.4, whether your camera has 45 megapixels or 61, whether your sensor has 14 stops or 15 stops of dynamic range, whether your autofocus can track at 20 frames per second or 30, whether your color science is accurate or whatever, none of it matters. Do you know what matters? Can you see light? Can you understand composition? Can you tell a story? Do you have something to say? Can you recognize a moment? Have you developed taste? Those are the questions, friends. And the gear influencers will never talk about them because you can't monetize taste. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to stop watching gear reviews for 6 months. Cold turkey. Be brave. Stop reading spec comparisons. Unsubscribe from channels that make you feel shit about your gear. Stop pixel peeping about your own work. View your images the size that they'll be seen. Does it work at that size? That's really the only question. Stop asking, is it sharp enough? And start asking, does this work? Because the technical stuff, the sharpness, the dynamic range, the color science, that's table stakes, you know? Modern cameras are so good. The technical differences are so small for 99% of photography. And I don't care what you're talking about. The Canon R5, the Sony A7 IV, the Nikon Z9, they're all incredible. It doesn't matter. You can make extraordinary work with any of them right now. The uncomfortable reality that we all live with is that now, in 2026, the limiting factor is not our gear. It's you. It's your vision, your taste, your ability to see. You don't develop that by shopping. You develop it by working. So go to a museum, look at photographs, not on Instagram, printed on a wall. Spend 15, 20 minutes on one image. Don't ask what lens was used. Who cares? Don't pixel peep the corners. But ask the question, why does this work? What is the light doing here? How is this frame composed? What's the emotional impact? What is the image trying to say? Read photography books, especially the dusty ones, you know? The ones that smell like mildew. Not the gear guides, the photography books. Alex Soth, Richard Avedon, Sally Mann, Robert Frank, Gregory Crutzen, and study their work. Notice what they're doing. Notice what you're drawn to. Notice what you're not seeing in your own work. And lastly, and this will be hard for some of you, shoot without reviewing. I challenge you to turn your LCD screens off. Spend the whole day, go out and shoot. Spend the whole day without checking your screens. Because every time you check, you're evaluating technical performance. Is it sharp? Is it exposed correctly? Trust yourself. Trust your technical gut to make a good image. Because, again, you're not evaluating the image. Shoot blind. Edit later. And when you do edit, when you finally get back to your computer, don't zoom at 100%. Look at the image at the size that it'll be seen. Does it work at that size? That's the only question here that matters. So, again, stop comparing. Stop comparing your gear to other people's gear. Stop comparing your work to other people's work. And start asking the question, what am I trying to say? And am I actually saying it? Look, I get it. You want guidance. We all want guidance. Especially when we're spending thousands of dollars, you want someone to tell you what to buy, what gear actually matters, what is a worthy investment. This is not unreasonable. Gear, again, does matter. A good camera matters. A good lens matters. They enable capability, but they don't replace vision. And the problem with gear influencers is that they've optimized for the algorithm, not your growth. They're not asking, what does this photographer actually need? They're asking, what video will get me the most views? Those are totally different questions. It's okay that you bought gear that you didn't need. It's okay that you watched the reviews and believed them. It's okay that you thought the upgrade would help. You weren't being stupid. And listen, humans, we want shortcuts, you know, we want relief. We want someone to say, do this and it'll work. And photography influencers, they give you that, you know. But salvation, as we've learned, can't be purchased. Growth can't be monetized. Vision can't be put in a shopping cart. The camera you have right now in your bag, whatever it is enough. Not enough to get started, enough to make extraordinary work. If you master it. If you stop shopping and start shooting. If you stop watching reviews and actually start making images. Because the Oracle, friends, will always keep preaching. New cameras, new lenses, new promises. This one's sharper. This one has better autofocus. This one will change everything about your work. It won't. The only thing that changes your photography is you. Your vision, your commitment, your willingness to look at the world and see something worth showing someone else. That's the work. Everything else is just shopping. For me, I'm learning to sit with uncertainty more. On edits, on set, when a client asks for something that I haven't done before, I used to Google immediately, how do other photographers handle this? Now I just trust myself. I try something. I make a choice. I see what happens, and I adjust. It's slower, more uncomfortable, but the images feel more mine, you know? I'm not saying that I have it figured out, please hear me. I'm just saying I'm letting more things stay unresolved, more questions unanswered, more discomfort unmedicated by shopping. The camera I own is now, 4 years old? It's scratched, the grip is worn where my hand sits, and I'm not upgrading. Not anytime soon. Not because I'm morally superior, but because I finally realized that the thing that I'm looking for isn't in the next camera. It won't make my work better. But actually, it's in the thousands of frames that I haven't shot yet. And I can't buy those. So, I know this one has been long, friends. Thank you for staying with me. And until next week, stay curious, stay courageous, and yeah, stay terrible.